I have a terrifying encounter that I have to share with you, and I'm actually going to read the witness's account word for word. Listen to what she has to say and tell me what you think. This past summer, we purchased a 30-year-old home on 10 acres in a farm country on the Michigan-Ohio border. The house was built by a man who sold it to us, and he lived there with his wife until they got too old to maintain it. Alongside of our property, marking our property line, is an old dirt road that's long been abandoned, is now overgrown with trees. We call it the lane, and it's a highway for animals and my 3 preteens, who were immediately drawn to the trees. Within the first couple of weeks, my 2 youngest and a friend of theirs experienced something that frightened them, and now the kids don't go out after dusk. My husband, who has planned on using the lane to hunt, is now nervous about his evening hunts. This is what happened, and as best as I can describe it from my daughter's point of view. The 3 girls went out to walk the lane in the dark. They each had a cell phone and were using the flashlights on them to guide their steps. About halfway down the lane, my oldest daughter, I'll call her E, suddenly felt heavy and scared. She said she felt like she couldn't go any further or shouldn't go any further. E was walking in front and stopped. She moved her light from the path and upwards and saw a being that stood midway in the path, roughly 30 feet in front of her. She describes it in detail, and I had her draw a picture, which I will attach. It was the form of something human-like, with no head, no hands or feet. She said it was light gray and somewhat translucent. It began moving towards her on the lane, and she described it as a gliding, but then even though she couldn't tell it had something like legs moving, it was almost like a long skirt. The legs were fused together, and it was gliding across the ground while seemingly putting one leg in front of the other. E says she immediately felt like it wanted them to leave, like it was protecting something. But even though she was scared, she said she didn't feel like it wanted to hurt them, just scare them. Her fear made her angry, and she yelled at it, "No, stop, stay back." I was in our backyard at the time, and though I couldn't make out what she was saying, I recognized her tone as very angry, and I thought her and her sister were fighting. I heard the girl screaming and E angrily yelling stuff in the lane. E turned around and pushed one of the other girls back in the opposite direction. The 2 girls behind her recognized that E was very scared and just turned and ran in the dark. They did not know what they were running from, but screamed in fear as E yelled, "Run, it's coming." As one of the girls in front was running, she tripped and fell and lost a shoe. E, who was still behind them, pushing them in a panic, bent down to help the girl up. She says, as she bent down and grabbed the girl's shoe, she looked behind her, again pointing the light in that direction. The entity was now crawling, gliding towards them. It wasn't fast, but this slow movement that never really touched the ground. It was at this time that the entity was witnessed by the girl that had fallen. She states she saw this gray mist, human-like thing bent over. The 3 girls ran out of the trees and didn't turn around until they were almost at the house. They couldn't see it anymore. I'm trying to figure out what this thing was. The idea of it being a ghost seems strange because the houses here are spread so far apart, and I know no deaths occurred in this house. I wondered if they startled something that was protecting the land. Teens with electronics may have been a surprise to an ancient entity who was not expecting them. I do know that the Shawnee Indians call this area home amongst some other tribes, and there are Indian mounds about 15 miles down the road. My question is, what do you think this is? Is there something we can do, an offering we can make to let it know we mean no harm? My husband thinks making a tobacco offering may be a good idea, and I'm actually planning on buying 7 more acres that currently being farmed and planting native trees and native grasses. So what do you guys think? What did their daughters encounter? Was it some sort of ancient Native American spirit? Was it a ghost? Maybe something else? Comment below and tell me what you think.